Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Black and White Reviews, because that's what I say, and my name is Lee.
My name is Chuck, and you usually say, hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Black and White.
I don't.
My name is Will.
And today we're going to talk about a favorite of mine that apparently you guys hate, which is great. 1994's Forrest Gump.
So why'd you say you guys?
You guys. I'm sorry, did I assume your gender? What do you mean?
You assumed that both of us hate this movie.
Oh, you guys, neither of you wanted to do it.
I never said I didn't want to do it.
Oh, okay, well.
I was the one who gave the okay to do it.
Okay, fine, whatever.
It was either that or 5 words being said in the movie with Castaway.
Whatever. Wilson, help, ouch,
Spalding.
No,
I have
Spalding
made
was
fire.
something else.
I know.
I have made fire. Yeah, so we were to toss up. I actually had a list of like 6 different movies, and I'm like, all right, Forrest Gump. And you're like, no. I'm like, fine, then Castaway. And you're like, no.
No,
Fine, then
no,
Forrest
no, no. No, you went. I have 2 options: Forrest Gump or Castaway. And I think my response was, neither.
Yeah, well, at that point. Yeah, so I want to talk about, so obviously back in 1994, I saw this movie. I don't think I saw it in theater, but I do remember watching it like right away and really appreciating the soundtrack. The soundtrack for this movie is fantastic. It's a 2-disc. Pretty sure I still have it somewhere. I know there was a red disc and a blue disc, and it all just kind of went in order of, I think it went in order of when they were in the movie itself. I got into a lot of my taste of music because of this movie. Now, I forgot who, it was a comedian who said it at one point. They said, they were talking about the different wars, and they said, Vietnam War, best soundtrack. And that's pretty much what this movie is, because it goes through from the 50s all the way up to really the 70s, I guess, right? 70s or early 80s, as far as the music that's in it. So for me, this movie is very much, it's like everything pop culture I ever learned, I got initially from this movie. Learning about the presidency, the different presidents that came through, and music as well. So this was huge for me. I mean, 97, I wasn't very old. What's that? Or sorry, 94. So I was 7. Yeah, that's why I chose this. And looking back at it, I appreciate Robert Zemeckis. I think that he has a lot that come into the movies that he does. I mean, he did this. He did Castaway. He did Polar Express. He did Back to the Future trilogy. He did that Christmas Carol that was CG that had Jim Carrey. I mean, for what it was actually pretty good. A little twisted, because Jim Carrey did what he did with it. But I mean, honestly, I've never had an issue with Zemeckis, and I appreciate what he did here with the story. I mean, you took a character that was very much, normally would be looked over, passed over, but then they gave him like this amazing story. Like all these things that would never happen to one person happened to one person who was very unlikely to be the person it would happen to. So that's why I chose it. But I'd love to hear why Chuck hates this movie so much. So Chuck, what are your thoughts?
Who said I hated the movie?
Okay, well, I want to hear your opinion on this movie then, Chuck.
So it's not my first choice.
Of course.
I'll be honest. I haven't watched this movie in over 30 years. Or
Really?
30
Oh.
years. Yeah.
Okay, so you just remember the mainstream jokes about it, and that's about it when you first saw it.
No, I remember the movie.
Okay.
And
oh, I forgot, because 30 years ago for you wasn't that long.
Just gonna keep it going, aren't you?
I'm gonna keep it going. Just like you guys keep talking about my mustache, I'm just gonna keep on talking about how you're old.
I'm like 6 years older than you.
Yeah, but
If
you're
that.
also in another decade.
5 years older than you.
Uh-huh.
I'm not. We were born the same decade.
No, you're now.
Oh my gosh. This movie, there was so much hype around this movie when it first came out, and throughout a lot of the middle of the 90s. And it's an over 2-hour drama. That you're right. This stuff wouldn't happen to a normal person, much less this guy. And the movie is so self-aware that there is a line in the middle of it that gives the whole thing away, that makes it self-aware of how ridiculous this really is.
Mhm.
And I'm watching it going, this Tom Hanks, fantastic actor this whole film.
Oh yeah.
He does a great job. Lieutenant Dan does a great job. The story is what I was saying to Will is when you have a science fiction or an action film or this crazy off the wall movie that like you have to suspend belief to enjoy the movie, like Star Wars.
Suspend disbelief. Yeah.
You have to do all of that to watch the film. I'm fine with that. Typically when you watch a drama, you're watching a drama because you're watching a lot of potentially realistic scenarios happening to people. This is all unrealistic. None of this would happen. Zero of this would happen. It's a drama. It's 2.5 hours. It's drawn out. And it was all done because in '94, the big thing that hit I think the number one reason why this movie was done was because in the mid '90s is when they had the big outbreak of HIV. So they had to somehow maneuver that into a movie and make it a love story that's a drama, and they did it through this movie, and they never even say it. There's this unknown virus that I have, and blah, 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 blah. But they had to do it this way and make it, so I think the acting of him was fine. I think the story was overdone. I think that it was over dramatized. I think that none of it is possible. Much less potentially one thing, but everything that happens to him is so unrealistic and impossible that it lost me in the first 20 minutes of the movie.
Now, you're saying that there's not a single thing that happened that could happen to him, or you're saying the fact that all of these things happened to him is not possible?
Okay. To him, none of it would happen.
Really?
Someone being autistic as him,
He can't run.
Someone
and play
being
football.
Someone being as autistic as him, first of all, would not be on a college football team. Second of all, would not be in the military in that time frame. Today, maybe, but in that day and time, it would not be allowed.
I have to push back. I have to push back on that a little bit. Anybody would have been brought into Vietnam. If you were able-bodied, you were going to Vietnam.
Yeah.
Your education really didn't matter there at all. They were looking for anybody and everybody who was capably able of doing that job. And
True.
Even
And
if you are autistic, hey, if you could pick up a rifle and shoot, if you can, dive to avoid getting shot, you're going. I have to push back on that one just a little bit.
Okay,
They were
but
taking everybody.
Which is fine, but the line that's in this movie when he's like, "How smart you are! The military, the U.S. Army could use someone like you because of how brilliant you are." That right there, the fact that they made him go from the Army to, you know what? Maybe you're not supposed to be on the battlefield. You're supposed to be playing ping pong. That's fine. But being in the White House twice for 2 different reasons, all of these things that happened to him, he's just in the right place at the right time all of the time. All of the time.
Yeah.
Literally all of the time. And yeah, it just, and the fact that he actually ends up with her, it's to be honest, do I hate the movie? No. Is it okay? Do I think film-wise, the way that it was filmed was fantastic. The way that Tom Cruise, the way that Tom Hanks plays this character is fantastic. Outside of that, I'm probably gonna get like ripped apart by so many people for this. I'm not an overall. If you never mentioned this, I would have been happy never watching this movie again. Ever. This movie is ridiculous. It is dumb through and through because none of it would happen, and it's written like it's possible that all of this could happen. No, they took Rain Man and they made this movie like it was no. And And the only reason at the end of the film why what happens with her is what happened. Like
Yeah.
is because she knows that, you know what? She used him at the end of the film. She uses him. She doesn't love him. She used him through the whole film
Yeah.
and then used at the end. And no, nope, no. Nope. I don't get how anybody watched this movie for 2.5 hours and said, I want to watch this over and over and over and over. And there are funny parts to the film. There are some funny things that happen. There is craziness that happens. The way that it was shot was fine. Again, the acting by Tom Hanks was fine. Everything else, though, nope. Totally lost me. And I'm probably going to be the only person in this group that's going to be saying this the entire time. But no, totally lost me. Not the right movie to suspend disbelief for. But
Well-
now that I just pissed at everyone's Cheerios.
No. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Well,
'Cause
I will in spoiler territory. We can get into more, but I just, yeah, there's just so much that just, no. Like I said, I haven't watched it since the mid '90s, and then after this, I'll probably never watch it again. I have no desire to. My biggest question is this, and I'll say this part because it's not really spoilery, but when Lieutenant Dan wants to become his first mate and he jumps off the boat and the boat is going downstream and then all of a sudden
No,
it
that's
turns
the other
around and it crashes into a barge over here.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
There's nobody on the boat.
No.
How?
I just assumed that the wheel was just turned. It's
It's
somehow
going
did a big loop.
They're on a
I
river.
thought about that too.
They're on
I
a
know.
river going
I know.
with
Yeah.
no.
You find shrimp in the river? I thought shrimp was like
He's docked
seawater.
in the river. He's using that to go out
yeah,
in the ocean.
yeah.
But and then out of all of the boats that are like, how is it this boat is the one that survives?
Well, yeah. Lieutenant Dan.
And there's no
he
way.
said he's like, you're never gonna sink this boat. Yeah, that's why.
Okay.
Anyway,
So go ahead, Will.
Okay. I think I agree with everything that Chuck said about this movie. I don't hate it though. I absolutely don't hate it. Is it one of my favorites? No. It's not. Probably if I had to like rank like my top 10 or top 20 films of all time, it wouldn't even make it there. If you're gonna tell a story about the most contentious time period in American history, 50s, 60s, 70s, you could do a lot better than have it through the eyes of an idiot. That's the big problem that I have with this movie, where you're telling the story and you're going through this really weird and complicated and contentious history period, but it's like you're telling it from the point of view of an idiot that none of it affects at all. It affects the audience because the audience is like, oh my God, this, that, and this situation, and this, when this event happened and that, but the idiot doesn't care. And I feel like you can like look at it like through a certain lens, like the juxtaposition of that is the average person is not affected, nor does the average person care all that much about like these big significant moments in history. So I guess you can look at it like that if you want to. And that's where I agree with Chuck about everything. None of this would ever happen to one person. None of the situations in this movie would ever happen to somebody who is this autistic, with the exception of maybe going to Vietnam, because he wasn't like full on autist, but he was close enough that he wasn't gonna like surpass a certain IQ. He was never gonna be like an engineer or anything like that. He's just, you know, your typical layman. That's what I have to say about that. And again, we're going to get into a lot more detail later about, you know, the situations that this person finds himself in. And I think each and every single one of them are absolutely ridiculous. This should have been a more serious movie if you want to tell this story. And it should have been from several different point of views, not just one, because it absolutely destroys like a lot of credibility. However, I debated on whether or not I was going to say this, and I've been thinking for a while about how I wanted to approach this. So if any of this sounds planned or like rehearsed, it's because it was. I've been talking to myself about this for a few days now. The movie hits me on an emotional level for two reasons. One, my mother died of AIDS. Two, I fell in love with a Jenny. I have something like that in my past, and it sucks. It absolutely sucks to watch. And Forrest is not, he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand what's happening, but the audience does. And I understood what was happening, so it was like this big, massive emotional gut punch for me when I went through this time around. Because hindsight is 20/20. And this movie like opened my eyes. Well, not this movie, but like over the last like few years, I look back on my life and I go, oh my God, this made sense, and this made sense, and this made sense, and this was this, and this. Hindsight is 20/20. So watching this movie and having that all come kind of wrap around and back again for me, it was this like massive emotional moment for me. So in that regard, I kind of love it because I can relate to that, but only that. Like that's the only part about this movie that I love. Everything else is ridiculous, and I agree. Everything else is absolutely ridiculous. Are there funny parts? Of course. Is this my favorite Tom Hanks? No. Is this? I don't even think he acted this all that well because I think he went a little overboard. And
well, not according to Major Osiris Downey Jr.
Sure. I mean, you never go full retard, but he didn't go full retard, but he went like there enough where it was like, I don't know. I don't know the whole like how and we'll get into it later, but like as an example of what I'm talking about, he went a little bit over the top. Everybody, no matter where you are on the scale of IQ, you should be able to grasp the concept of football and running in a straight line. Why do they have that ridiculous scene where it's like, no, you're going the wrong way, go the other? And are you serious? Even the water boy understood running a straight line. And he was way more stupid than this Forrest character. And it's ridiculous that something like that happened. In instances like that, and it's the only one that'll give away here, in instances like that, yeah, he was way over the top about a lot. And
a lot of stuff.
It's I think it's kind of a smack in the face to people who do suffer from mental retardation or even low IQ. Like a character like this being this down, this dumb is horrible. It did not do very much for me at all.
And I think to your point though, not to cut you off, is you had mentioned the whole Jenny aspect of it. If that was that was like the center of the story was him and Jenny.
Right.
And we understand that. And there's all this stuff in life that was going on. If they gave him one thing throughout this 20 some odd year 30-year time frame from when he meets Jenny till what happens. And there's
HIV, right?
What?
Because somehow he's okay. Or is that the sequel that they explain it?
What?
Huh? Continue. Go ahead.
No, so the whole movie from beginning to end is about that. If they gave him one thing and they were flipping back and forth to what she was doing in the coming in and coming out of what, in and out of his life and doing all of this stuff, for me, that would have been fine. So there's a movie called I Am Sam. Yep. And it has Dakota Fanning and Sean Penn. And Sean Penn, he is an autistic. I think he's autistic. He may even have Down syndrome.
No.
I think he might have Down syndrome.
No.
Either he's autistic. He has one of the two. I think it's more autistic. But it's this whole court case of him trying to win custody of his daughter because the state is trying to take her because they're saying that he's not qualified or fit to take care of her. And there's this one thing that is the focus of this relationship, and he plays the part fantastic. And it's this back, there's all this other stuff going in and out. If they had done something like that with this movie, it would have been way better. The fact that they put him through all of this stuff and he was successful at all of this stuff, all because they're trying to prove one point. The public school principal or the auditor was wrong. Outside of that, no. And I agree with Will on everything he just said. So sorry to cut you off on that one, but it's too much.
I completely forgot where I was going. I think I'll piggyback on one thing that you said. If this movie was done a little bit differently, like, okay, so you said give the character one thing. If you want to give the character of Forrest Gump Vietnam, fine. If you want to give the character of Forrest Gump, you know, the Purple Heart and everything, like, despite being, you know, mentally unintellectual, stupid. If you want to give him like the Purple Heart for saving a bunch of people in his platoon, I'm okay with that. If you want to give him the shrimping idea because like his best friend and everything, like that's a really feel-good story. And then everything else with his mom and Jenny you can rope into. That would be a really good feel-good story. And even if you wanted to tell it in the timeline that it is and just have all of these major events happen in the background and have Forrest be the character that does not care, that is not affected, that does not understand. What's important to him was, you know, Lieutenant Dan. What was important to him was his mother. What was important to him was keeping his promise to his friend Bubba. It was important. Jenny was important, like taking care of the people in his life that he cared about. And everything else that's going on, you know, Cuban Missile Crisis, Bay of Pigs, Kennedy assassination, MLK, and all this other stuff. If you want to have all that happening in the background, and he's not paying attention, I would be even okay with that. I think that would have been a better movie. But to give this character everything in these major key events was way too much. And I think I'm done. I think I want to get more into specifics later on, but those are my thoughts.
So I'm gonna say, before we get into spoiler territory, I'm gonna say I think so. This movie came out in 1994. And the story itself, you know, with him on the park bench takes place in 1981. So I didn't realize it was that early, you know. And when I watched it in 94, I'm like, well, I guess now I looked at it, I'm like, there's no way he lived all this time and is this young. Oh, it's because it's 1981, not 1994.
Right.
So that makes sense. But I think the only thing that they were focusing on is, so in the early 90s, so I've spent many years working with or even just being involved in one way or another with people who have intellectual disabilities, you know. Just because my mother worked in the field for years, I worked in the field for years, and in that, there's massive stigmas. So in '94, I think one big thing they were pushing was let's get away from the terminology, you know, like, you know, the DMR technology, or sorry, terminology, not technology, but you know, the term retardation. You know, it became a word, you know, just like we did when we were younger, saying something like, oh, that's gay or whatever, like taking the term for something else and making it a negative thing. Oh, you're being retarded or whatever. It became a negative thing that you call something or somebody, as opposed to it was a very commonly used term way before that. But then it started becoming, you know, being used for something else and being ruined. So then it was like, okay, this is offensive now because people use this in a bad way. So they had to change the terminology. So what they were trying to show here, and I think that was the big push of the movie, not just, I mean, we're talking mid-90s, yeah, so there was a talk of HIV/AIDS. They didn't talk about it all. They didn't say what it was. Is really trying to show an awareness of, you know, there's that line in Dumb and Dumber. It's like, senior citizens, although old and dangerous behind the wheel, can still serve a purpose. I'll be right back. Don't you go dying on me. Like, funny line, but the idea that he's trying to do here is that I feel like Zemeckis and the team who made this movie was trying to do is also say, hey, you know, look at somebody that we would see, you know, sitting on a park bench and like, are they stupid or just playing crazy or whatever? It's like, well, stupid is stupid does, but you realize, you know, this guy lived a ridiculous life. Now, it's way out there. It's even, you know, I would even call this fantasy in the sense that they went so far with the story. You know, very much like a Walter Mitty type situation, where it's like, there's no way that this random dude would just go through all of this stuff after being like, whatever he did for work before that. Like, would he look at, like, negatives, like pictures? That's what he did. He was a negative reader. Like, this really boring job, just taking negatives and developing them or whatever. That was that. But he goes off and has this grand adventure that's, like, ridiculous. Well, it's a very similar type story. It's kind of why I like both of them. Anything where somebody goes through this major, journey, and then at the end, it's like they either changed a ton or, in this case, he's kind of just oblivious to it. He just kind of did his own thing. But I think the big focus here was, as you mentioned, I agree with the HIV, bringing that to light, like this was a big deal. Let's talk about it. But also, I think the big thing was just showing that, people with intellectual disabilities, they can contribute to a lot. And it's like, you shouldn't just judge people and cast them aside because they're different in this way, because their IQ is down to 61 or whatever they said it was in the movie. So I think that was the point of the movie more than anything. And there's lines in it where he's like, I may not be a smart man, but I do know what love is. Like, that's a really big thing there, and it hits Jenny. And, we've got this thing back and forth. It hits Jenny because
we'll
Jenny,
get there.
you can tell, like, throughout the movie, it's not spoiler in a sense, that she is conflicted, because she knows that he's different, but you can see where she's like, this guy actually cares about me and loves me more than anyone else, but he's different and I can't have a relationship with him. That would be weird, So as the years go by, she finally realizes this guy truly does love me and he seems to really know what love is. And, and then everything else. And she's got a kid with him and, whatever. I mean, yeah.
So
love has nothing to do with this.
Zero.
Big fat zero. Love has nothing to do with Jenny and why she makes the decisions that she does. Nothing.
Zero.
So there is that. But I'm sorry to cut you off. Continue.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
We'll get into it.
We can get into it at this point. Yeah. So, Chuck, you want to do your spiel?
Is it my spiel now?
It's your spiel.
Yeah, it's your spiel.
Yeah, you're the social media dude.
So if you want to watch the rest of this podcast, feel free to join us on patreon.com/Black and White Reviews. For all things social media, you can find us on the YouTubes and Instagram at Black and White Reviews 1866, and you can find us on Facebook at Black and White Reviews. Other than that, all of our podcasts, audio-wise, are all free on all podcasts, or most podcast platforms. So if you're listening, continue to listen. If you're watching, join us at patreon.com.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
So with that being said,
go ahead. If you want to go first, go ahead.
Yeah, the conversation that we were just having about Jenny,